Hey there, welcome back to True North Reviews. My name is Ryan, and today we're going to be looking at the fourth studio release from the English alternative chamber pop group Florence and the Machine. This one is called High as Hope. Let's get into it. So with this group, it's headed up by the lead vocalist Florence Welch, and they've been putting out one solid record after another in the 2010s. Their most recent project, How Big, How Blue, How Beautiful, I really enjoyed that one a lot. So when they announced that this album would be coming out in June, I was really excited to see what the band was doing. The first cut on this album is entitled June, and this one is remarkably beautiful for its vocals and how they just hang in the air with the references to the angels that Florence Welch is singing about. There are strong vocal harmonies on the intro cut on High as Hope, and it's always a gripping stickiness to them and how Florence is able to showcase these different layerings of the high and the lower kind of register. The only downside to the song I would say is the abrupt ending, but I feel like it plays in well enough to tie in with the lyrical concept of the song, which is Florence and the Machine performing in Chicago on the same night as the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando back in 2016. Essentially, the song is detailing the idea of lightness and darkness and how they can be shed on society through the idea of the definition of love. The acts of defiance that Florence is referring to are a nod to Pride Month, and it's not a coincidence that the song is called June and Pride Month is June. Overall, it's a great intro cut that bleeds perfectly into the next song, and it cohesively narrows in on the themes that this album will be discussing. The second track on High as Hope is one of the singles that was released before the album dropped, and I am really enjoying this one. It's extremely personal, and it's talking about how Florence starved herself at the age of 17, yet Welch is still able to see the void or emptiness of love as a chance to drive herself for something more. Furthermore, the lyrics are about a person redefining what love means to them, possibly experimenting with drugs, being on stage and performing for random people, or just being stripped down to the little moments of life where you feel loved in the presence of pure bliss and the human character at its most innocent. Not only this, but I feel like the vulnerability of this song is a deeper exploration of human beauty and the weight of drugs and technology, which would be acting as the sensation or the stimuli, coupled with the fact that people might be judging or viewing you, which act as the perception. Sonically, Hunger's pre-chorus's vocal performance is the hard-hitting part of this song for me emotionally, as Welch belts out a mixture of falsettos and her lower register singing work it for me. And lastly, lavish textures are added to the song with the delicate string instruments, the thumping bass, the full and vibrant piano, and the call and response of the vocal harmonies. Moving on from Hunger, we get the third track on this album, which is called South London Forever, and this is when the album really sinks in with me as more of a philosophical investigation of epistemology, which is known as the theory of knowledge. Like, yes, there are points to a song that I feel like it's deep and relevant to the definition of our human character or what our maturity looks like with age, but at times I feel like this song is still easy to relate to with its reminiscence for youth. However, I feel like sonically this is more of a low light on the record, especially for the galling vocal performance, but it's made up for with the lyrics and how they can still elevate the story being told on the project as a whole. Next up, we get the cut of Big God, which is definitely my favorite on this entire record. The lyrics are just spot on. I'm not much of a religious person, but I feel like having that sense of faith can still be a powerful and heartwarming experience. So interpreting this song, even for just its literal meaning, it's fulfilling to find your own means of belief in yourself, to understand the inner demons that tick as our internal clock. And it's not just the lyricism that makes this song so great. I feel like it's the sound being created with the tension of the brass instruments, the auxiliary percussion, the reverberating vocals. Each of these three elements play off each other and provoke the overall sadness and melancholic mood of the entire song. Moving on from Big God, we get the other single that was released before this album dropped, and it's called Sky Full of Song. Essentially what it's talking about here is the paradoxical freedom from reality, as Florence is filling the sky with song as she realizes that this alleged freedom that she's feeling also makes her feel more constrained, as most of her songs are talking about her relationships that might end up being a little claustrophobic and a little detrimental to her mental health. Sonically, this cut is not something I can really come back to as a single, but I do appreciate the towering vocals that soar over this track. Grace is the next song on this record, and it's a piano ballad which acts as an apology to Florence's younger sister, who's named Grace, which is a clever play on the word grace because it could mean someone's name, but it could also mean being courteous or having goodwill. Most importantly, I feel like Florence is having a moment of realization on this song. I feel like she's starting to understand that she isn't treating her sister the way that she deserves to be treated. Lyrically, I do admire this song, but I feel like this cut along with the end of Love get caught up in the off-the-cuff kind of rambling that causes the rhythm to be thrown out of whack at some points. And I think this is due more to the folk kind of influence on the songwriting of High as Hope, that the story dictates most of the form for this album, only making certain parts jarring even though it might have been aiming for something more fulfilling. And this doesn't bode well for the fact that a couple of the songs on this record laboriously pull on the emotional resolutions in the most awkward and tedious ways possible. Moving on from that criticism, I do have really good things to say about the next song, Patricia. It's written in recognition of Patti Smith, who is also known as the godmother of punk music. It's an upbeat jam, yet still remaining introspective at times, especially with the outlook of life and how it's a tribute to Patti Smith's influence on Florence's lifestyle, which shines through with a tender and momentous part of this record during the outro. Following up Patricia, we get the next song, which is called 100 Years, which continues with the overarching theme of love, as this song here questions whether love can persist through many life-altering events. And personally for me, the song really hits its peak in the second half of the runtime after a bit of an interlude, as it soars through with just badass vigor and power. Moreover, the horn arrangement is one of the highlights for this song, and I couldn't help but to notice that Kamasi Washington had his hands all over this aspect of the album. The penultimate track on this record is called The End of Love, which isn't really surprising that it's talking more about love here, but it's the idea of finding affection through free will, and not just for the sake to fill a void or to patch things up to find a temporary fix. On this cut, there's beautiful vocals, but overall a forgettable song that doesn't really stick in my mind even after multiple listens through this record, sadly. And my other problem with this song is the ordering of the track listing. It just feels like this one should have been the closing track to give the album a bit of finality, but instead it's the second last song. But there's a bigger issue that remains on this record, and that's really in the melody department. I feel like the lyrics are, again, heavily controlling this element of the music, and I can't help but to feel that Florence is kind of letting her stream of consciousness flow onto paper without putting much thought or conviction behind it, which wouldn't necessarily be considered such a bad thing for a record that is explaining itself through journal-like entries. Just something here feels a little bit awkward and is making me question more of the melodic stick of this project for the future. So overall, the lavish and somber tones of High as Hope hit me as a great direction for Florence and the Machine, as the group sticks to its core sound, but it's the spontaneity in the lyrical form that makes me skeptical of the record's long-term replay factor. But despite this, I still admire the lyrical concepts and the effort being put forth to avoid the one-dimensional kind of approach in the songwriting to the record as well. So with all that said, I'm feeling a 7 out of 10. Sound off down below in the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. Agree or disagree. I'm here to engage with you guys. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. My name is Ryan from True North Reviews, and as always, have a rockin' day. Thanks for watching.